Perfect. If you've been with us before, I see a lot of familiar names. This is the place where we do the official legal brief. On a good note, it is abbreviated in case you missed the announcement on the 20X meeting last week. So here it is. I am communicating to you today in my official capacity on behalf of the FedRAMP Program Management Office at the General Services Administration. We hold these meetings to enhance transparency between industry and FedRAMP so that we can open a dialogue and share new developments. Nothing that we share constitutes business advice, and any reference in this conversation to any specific commercial product or any use of any corporation name is for the information and convenience of the public and does not constitute endorsement, recommendation, or favoring by GSA. That being said, we've got a pretty light slide. We've got a pretty light crowd too, assuming it's because it's the holiday week. But we'll talk some of the community working group adjustments. If you were in the 20X one last week, you'll know some of those since Pete announced them there. We will talk a little bit about the SCN beta as we get close to moving into the closed beta next week. I do see some names of some folks who were here now in the closed beta, so that should be exciting. Some of the standards updates that we're tracking across both Rev5 and 20X. All of the requests for comments have closed, so we'll give kind of status updates on some of those. And last but not least, right, this is a Rev5 Community Working Group. Did want to talk about just some of the Rev5 blockers that we see throughout the authorization process. All right, so administrating to the community working groups. This was announced last week from Pete. We're trying to announce it in both working groups as part of the meeting via an email, what we did last time when we made adjustments to the community working group to hopefully get a better adjustment. The community groups will now be held on a monthly basis, right? The Rev5 Community Working Group will be held the first Wednesday of every month. Clearly that's it. So our next meeting will be 6 August. The 20X working group will move to the fourth Wednesday of every month. For both of those working groups, we will update the Zoom invite. For the overwhelming majority of folks, when we updated the Zoom invite, it didn't update most calendars automatically. So you're going to have to go in and just manually check that your calendar is updated. If not, update it yourself. The link should not change. It did not change last time we updated it, the direct Zoom link. So there will be one for 20X and one for Rev5. We will post those in GitHub right now. Alicia Crow is posting in GitHub the updates, so folks are tracking it. And like I said, please ensure it is on your calendar. I know Zoom does not update a lot of folks, and we got a lot of emails last time. So trying to avoid that, we're announcing it at both these meetings, and we will once again post it on GitHub and hopefully ease some of the confusion. All right, so the SCN beta standard testing, right? Testing, or the beta is anticipating to start next week. If you are a participant, we will push out guidance early next week. A majority, and I'll talk a little bit about the requirements to get into the beta, but a majority of the folks that are in the beta have significant change, or the closed beta have significant changes later on in the cycle. So it's given us a little bit of leeway to kind of figure out initial processes and flows and stuff like that. But we'll push out some guidance next week for those who are participating. If you are interested in participating in the open beta, again, we talked a little bit about that crawl, walk, run methodology, right? The crawl being a closed beta, more of an invite only for folks that that may be going through, so we can do it at small scale to kind of get our processes flushed out for these betas, right? The second one being an open beta, which is an opt-in period. I'll go over the complete requirements for that here in the next slide, but that is opening up September and October, and then assuming everything goes as planned, we'll do a wide release for Rev5, which means starting in November, the significant change process will be in effect for all Rev5 folks. The key outcomes from this beta, it was asked, I don't know if it was asked in an email to us or if it was asked in the forums, I can't remember, but I thought it'd be good to just kind of throw that out here, right? The key outcomes are identify identifying any of the SEN implementation barriers, right? Prioritizing areas for further TA development and refinement, the technical assistance, just starting up the initial conversations with some of the CSPs and 3POs that are involved in the closed beta, right? We've already realized some areas where we need to flush out the technical assistance, right? So for example, the transformative changes, right? That does require some sort of third-party evaluation on the end, right? At what point does it go into the marketplace, right? From the point it goes live, or from the point that the evaluation is complete, or do you put it in, with an asterisk that says, hey, this service is alive as part of this CSP. It is currently undergoing, the evaluation as part of the SEN process. So fleshing out things like that are huge for these, both the closed and the open beta. Elicit best practices. Like I said, this is a first for us, and this is relatively newish, I guess, in the government. So just identifying those best practices and starting to document those. If you'll remember, kind of the tier of standards, right? We are publishing a high-level standard. There's technical implementation or technical assistance that will support implementation associated with that, and then there'll be best practices associated with those as well. So just starting to develop those. And lastly, I think I said this already, right? This is our first beta as part of the Rev5 process improvement in 20X. So just establishing a repeatable process for all the Rev5 20X betas to come. As you know, there's a bunch in the works. So just kind of fleshing out that process will be huge. For folks that do want to join the open beta, we did get a ton of emails. Thank you for pushing us to push this out. I will put this in GitHub as well for the folks that aren't here, that don't get to watch the video on the tail end, right? But here are the complete list of requirements. I went over the high-level ones last meeting, right? But clearly you have to have an active authorization. It's got to be in good standing, right? You have to have a planned significant change within that beta window, right? September, October timeframe. You must have clearly identified or leveraged the SEN to identify the significant change and the type of change that it is, right? You either have to have agency buy-in, right? So your agency sponsors must either agree to be part of this beta, or there must be some sort of opt-in, opt-out functionality associated with it, where if one of your multiple agencies doesn't agree with being part of this beta process, then they can opt out of that significant change functionality, right? How that works on your end is yours to figure out, whether it's feature flags. However, you must have a means to communicate the changes to agencies who are directly or indirectly consume the service. A lot of folks already have this as part of their collaborative continuous monitoring process. There's already methods and mechanisms that already exist. No need to invent new mechanisms, right? The other thing is must be willing to maintain a monthly cadence with the FedRAMP PMO. This can be as simple as just adding us to your collaborative continuous monitoring process. If that would be disruptive, right, we can figure out on the tail end how to just figure out a monthly battle rhythm to identify, kind of key areas that you're working towards and issues that you're running into, so that we can kind of work through those. Lastly, if you do need any support from third parties or any auditing agencies or anything like that, right, clearly before you agree to do the SEN, you should have that ready to roll. All right, and we actually specifically stood up a Rev5, and we didn't really announce it, right? But a Rev5 email address here at FedRAMP. But if you are interested in the open beta, here is the information that you need to send to the Rev5 at GSA.gov. Right, it's all pretty self-explanatory, so I won't run in depth. But I mean, when we push these slides out, if you are interested in, just copy and paste these bullets and add on to the end of it and shoot it off to the Rev5 at GSA.gov. Chances are there's about 4 or 5 of us that will hold it, and we will in a few days just kind of acknowledge that we received it. If we have any questions, great, but you more than likely won't get anything outside of a acknowledgement here within the first few days. And once again, I'll post this information to GitHub as well. All right, so a little bit of the discussion on standards updates. Since the last meeting, RFC 11, the pilot standard for sorry, I don't know what pilot is. Pilot standard for storing and sharing authorization data closed 22 June, right? This is the one where eventually we will turn off repository repo services within FedRAMP. We will do a very slow sundown per the director's guidance, but this is the stand up of agencies, not agencies, I'm sorry, CSPs owning the storage and repo requirements for their FedRAMP packages. That's closed 22 June. Thank you for everyone who posted comments. We did get a ton of comments for that. And that's pending release. If you are interested in any of the release or the release timelines, I purposely didn't put them here, right? Please go to our roadmap, right? There's a snapshot below, but you can link there directly from our GitHub. Like I said last week, if you weren't here last week, or I'm sorry, 2 weeks ago, Pete is manually updating each one of these major tasks themselves, right? Each one of the standard is a task within either the 20X or Rev5 process improvement one. So each one of those are being tracked every 2 weeks. We are, placing updates as they happen in there. And like I said, it's Pete's account that's doing it. So you're getting it directly from the horse's mouth. And the other thing we did release that's a little bit more 20X related, but it is a good, I think, crosswalk if you are floating in both the Rev5 and 20X space. They did update the key security indicators on the 28th of June. We actually didn't update any KSIs themselves. What we did is we crosswalked the 853 controls to the KSIs themselves. So most of the KSIs map from a one-to-many KSI to 800-53 controls. Here, I'll shoot to the next slide, which I think is a snapshot. Here's a snapshot in Markdown, so it's a little visually different. But yeah, like as you can see, the KSI for cybersecurity education, right? It's got the KSI in there, ensure all employees receive security awareness training, and then it starts to tie to the controls within 800-53, right? So that I know we had a lot of folks ask about kind of the control mapping piece, and this is our first stab at it. If you are playing in both these worlds, both Rev5 and 20X, and you happen to see either discrepancies in the mapping or areas that we can make adjustments, please drop it in the GitHub. This is a work in progress, and this is our first kind of stab at it. All right, and this is a Rev5 working group. So one thing, and this is not posted in GitHub. This came up over the last few days of some of the issues that we've continually been having. If you have had an authorization approved in the last 2-ish months, right, you've probably seen my name associated with it. Just went through this morning and started to compile a list of some of the things that we're starting to see a little bit more over and over, right? And like I said a few months ago, when this whole process, and we kind of reworked our process for authorization, right? The intent is not to get your package too administratively perfect, right? That's not our intent. That's never been our intent. The intent is to have enough understanding of your security posture that we're comfortable with authorization. And if there are issues identified, put them in to ensure that they are both captured and planned to be mitigated, right? So over the last few months, here are kind of the Paul Augusta's top 5 reasons that packages either get delayed, paused, or sent back. Right, and the first one, probably the one we get hit with the most, right, is the lack of required templates, right? We build these templates for a reason. Use the templates. If you are using the templates, make sure all the mandatory fields are filled out. We're not going to infer on behalf of a CSO that things are a certain way. Number 2 is the lack of traceability across key documents. And as I said, we're not looking for perfect. There's a lot of documents that are submitted as part of the authorization package. No doubt there's going to be traceability issues, right? Nobody's perfect, and that's fine. But when there their key lack of traceability, right? The biggest one that we run into and struggle with the most is traceability of the POAM, right? With the red, or really any issues identified during any one of the reviews, is finding that those issues traced to the POAM, right? And the easiest way to fix those traceability issues is just to stay consistent in your naming conventions, right? But if we are unable to start traceability, even with a little bit of manual work, we are going to push it back and ask you to either redo or to update, and we will pause your review in the process. Difficulty understanding the current risk posture due to incomplete or incomplete information within the POAM. All right, same thing, right? There's a lot of information in the POAM. There are a lot of fields. I get it, right? But they're all there for a reason. If you have questions before you submit, reach out to us. Happy to help. It's much easier for us to help you with a submission left of Boom than it is right of Boom, or Boom being submission, right? Once we're in the process, it is harder to stop, and it takes more time to restart after we've stopped. So please, if you are having issues, do have questions, just reach out to us. Difficulty understanding specific security capabilities, right? Encryption and authentication are probably the two biggest ones we get pushback on, or we do provide pushback on, right? Stating that you utilize, MFA is a great statement, but understanding what that actually entails, right? Understanding that it is, yes, both it is phishing resistant, multi-factor authentication, and is huge. Unclear diagram or supporting narrative. This is the last one I had today, right? Sometimes we get the one architecture diagram to rule them all. Yes, you can submit one diagram if it contains all the components required in a traditional, ABD data flow diagram, network diagram, but it's hard to contain all of those in one document or in one snapshot, right? That's usable. But either unclear diagram, no narrative, or the narrative doesn't support the visualization, right, is another big piece of our pushback, right? And package updates or queries mid-review, I can't tell you how disruptive, right, that is from just a review perspective, right? If we are, all of these documentations a lot of this documentation is interconnected with each other. If you change one piece midway through, it requires us to go back. The more time we spend on your package going back, the further our queue gets behind, right? So I'd ask that if you're not ready to submit, or you need updates in documentation, let us know before we start working on that package. And lastly, we do try to provide you a high-level timeline when we get your package. We generally will say, like, hey, your X number in the queue, right, there's something like there's X many packages ahead of you, and this is the timeline until we can get to your review started. I would humbly ask that you wait until you've at least hit that date before you start pinging us with requests on your packages, specific questions. The review team is not a big team. The active reviewers total 6, right? And that's me included, right? So anytime we take away with questions from review, it's time that's not spent on your package or someone else's package. Like I said, if we do provide you a timeline, I humbly ask that you not ping us until we've hit that timeline. Over the last year, we have brought authorization timeline down from I don't remember what it was, 6 to 8 months to weeks, right? Almost 6 to 8 weeks, right? There's been a drastic change in the pace for a positive. In the positive, I'd ask that you just give us the time that we ask for before you ping us. That being said, next working group is the 6th August at 1 p.m. I realize it's a holiday week, so if you're off on Friday, enjoy. Happy 4th of July. And if you need anything from us, don't hesitate to reach out. Please start with the forums. If you can't get what you need there, info@FedRAMP.gov is another great place. And I will see you all in, I guess, next month. All right. Thank you so much.